The movie opens with a scene of a tragic incident. It turns out to be the nightmare of a woman named Ha-kyung. Sometime later, she is visited by a detective named Chong and his partner, whom she lets in. The two men begin looking at some files, when one of them accidentally plays a tape, which plays a terrified little girl screaming for her mother, followed by the sinister voice of her kidnapper, so the man quickly shuts off the tape. Soon after, the detectives inform Ha-kyung that it has been 15 years since her daughter Seo-jin's tragic case. The statute of limitations is about to expire next week, and after that, the case will be closed unsolved. This makes Ha-kyung furious, and she tearfully shows them all the investigation she has done on the criminal. As the detectives prepare to leave, she reminds Chong of his promise to find the culprit, which he did not keep. Sometime later, an upset Detective Chong decides to visit the crime scene from 15 years ago, but he is stunned to find that someone has left a flower. He immediately calls Ha-kyung to ask if she had visited the place to leave flowers, but she denies it. She reveals that apart from the police, no one knows the location of the crime scene, which means it must be the culprit. Chong then notices a surveillance camera nearby, and later, he and his partner sit down to review the footage. They indeed find a man leaving the flower at night, but due to the distance and darkness, it is impossible to identify him. Without wasting any time, the two return to the same location, where they find fresh tire tracks not far off the road. It turns out the man's image was captured on CCTV at exactly 1:15 a.m. If he had returned on foot, taken his car, and driven through this route, he would have reached this blind spot between 1:40 and 1:50. And so, they decide to find all vehicles that pass through this area within those 10 minutes, especially those equipped with dashboard cameras. Following this, they launch a thorough investigation and eventually track down a man who had been driving along that route. The detectives analyze the footage captured by his car and notice a carnival vehicle passing by, but shockingly, it doesn't even have a license plate. However, days later, while reviewing the footage again, Chong notices that the vehicle has a distinctive sticker on it. The next day, with only 9 hours left before the statute of limitations expires, Chong is smoking outside a market, right when a carnival vehicle suddenly catches his eye. He rushes to check, and is stunned to see the same unique logo on it. At this moment, he spots a man holding an umbrella, watching him from a distance, before abruptly leaving. Chong immediately follows him through the crowded market, but loses sight of him. Later, he finds him again inside a nearby restaurant. The man sits with his face hidden behind a newspaper, so Chong also takes a seat nearby. However, as the detective approaches the man, his partner suddenly appears and calls out to him. Chong tries to confront the mysterious person, but the latter quickly runs away from there. He soon collides with Ha-kyung, who happens to be in the area as well. Chong desperately attempts to catch him, but the man jumps into his car and drives away. However, the detective at least manages to memorize the license plate. That night, the detectives learn that the license plate was also stolen from an abandoned car, leaving them with no clue. Ha-kyung is with them, and suggests that the man must have gone to other places with that plate. But a defeated Chong tells her to forget about it, since the statute of limitations will expire in just 2 hours. There's nothing more they can do anymore, so the disappointed woman also walks away from there. The next day, Chong, who feels weighed down by the guilt of failing to catch the culprit, decides to resign from his position. He packs the files of Seo-jin's case into a box and burns them on a rooftop. As the flames consume the papers, he listens to the voicemail Ha-kyung left him, in which she asks for the contacts of a list of people as her final request. Days later, we meet an old man named Han, who is playing with his granddaughter, Bom, and pushing her on the swing. He then hears the house phone ringing in the distance, and tells her to stay put before he heads inside. But when he's about to answer the call, it's hung up, which happens multiple times. And then suddenly...
여보세요, 누구세요?
When he rushes outside, he's horrified to find Bom gone. Not long after, the cops are contacted, so they come to the house to investigate and set up cameras. Han goes to the playground to show where she went missing, while the cops watch him through the camera. But while there, Han shockingly hears a phone ringing from the bushes. He gets the phone and notices Bomb's name popping up, and he hears his granddaughter screaming. The worried man tries to get the detective's attention through the camera, but they don't notice him, right when the kidnapper uses a voice changer to inform Han that he has his child. Elsewhere, Hak-young now decides to investigate by herself, so she arrives at the restaurant for any information. She asks the owner if he saw the criminal's face, but the man denies it. Hak-young then looks around and notices the umbrella left by the culprit, where she notices a logo of a bank. The scene then cuts to Bomb's home, where her mom receives a call from the kidnapper, who demands a $50,000 ransom by tomorrow morning. The woman asks for proof that her daughter is still alive, but the kidnapper hangs up abruptly. Afterward, the woman faints from stress, and the cops notice her scars, implying that she had undergone heart surgery years ago. One of the cops rushes to find Han at the playground, but he's nowhere to be seen, with only his phone left behind on the swing. Elsewhere, Hak-young arrives at the bank to investigate, and the staff informs her that the umbrella was given to their VIP clients as a souvenir. The employee seems reluctant to provide further information, so Hak-young simply asks what time she gets off work. Back at the house, the team successfully tracks the call location of the criminal and rushes there. They soon arrive at an isolated area with a payphone, but don't find much evidence except a discarded cigarette butt. In another scene, Hak-young meets with the bank employee after work, who provides her with all the crucial information about the VIP clients, so the desperate woman gives her some money in exchange for the help. Elsewhere, Bomb's mom once again receives a call from the kidnapper, who agrees to provide proof that the kid is still alive. He informs her that there will be a garbage truck passing in 3 minutes in front of her house, so the woman quickly runs out, and we soon see a flashback of Hak-young revealing that she was in the same situation once. She stepped in front of the truck and went to search the garbage, where she found a Polaroid picture of her daughter. In the present, the same thing happens once again, and Bomb's mother finds a picture of her daughter. Elsewhere, an officer named Kong calls the chief detective and reveals that the current kidnapping is strikingly similar to Seo Jin's case from 15 years ago, where the exact same methods were used. It turns out they never caught the culprit, and Seo Jin died at the scene. Kong then goes to the main precinct to look for files, but because Chong destroyed most of them, he can only find a sketch of the supposed kidnapper with Chong's name written on the bottom. The next morning, Kong visits Chong and tells him about the recent kidnapping and its striking similarities to the old case. Chong is immediately alarmed and pulls out the old files, which are half-burnt. We then see a flashback from 15 years ago, when Hak-young arrived at the train station with $50,000 to pay the ransom. But to everyone's shock, a large group of military personnel exited the train, and the cops found it difficult to identify the kidnapper. The kidnapper then picked up the bag of money, which was actually full of counterfeit bills, and fled without anyone noticing. In the present, Chong is confident that it's the same kidnapper, since he once got away with the perfect crime, and is now repeating it. Soon, the kidnapper calls Bomb's mother again and instructs her to drop the money at the same train station from 15 years ago. The scene then cuts to 15 years ago, where we see a devastated Hak-young on a phone call with the kidnapper, while recording the entire conversation. The kidnapper scolded her for trying to trick him with fake money. She apologized, so he gave her one last chance, and provided instructions on where she had to come for the exchange, while Seo Jin quietly grabbed something from her bag. Without wasting any time, Hak-young rushed to the location, and Chong, who had heard the tape, was also heading there. He asked his units to come, but unfortunately, all of them were busy that night. Hak-young eventually arrived at her destination, where she sat still while wearing a plastic bag over her head, as instructed by the kidnapper. In the present, Kong and Chong arrive at the train station to capture the kidnapper. Soon, Bomb's mom also arrives and places the duffel bag in the designated spot, which contains a tracker. Several cops are lurking nearby, and moments later, many soldiers in military uniforms exit the train just like before. Just then, the cops notice the movement of the bag. Turns out the smart kidnapper has taken the bag, and he removes and places the tracker on the rails, so that it is crushed by a passing train. Fortunately, Kong and Chong spot him fleeing, and give chase without wasting any time. After an intense pursuit, the kidnapper reaches a gate, and tries to throw the bag to the other side. But Chong intercepts him just in time. And then, to their shock, we then see a flashback when Han arrived at an isolated location in the woods under the kidnapper's orders. He soon heard bombs screaming in a nearby warehouse, so he went searching for her. But he only found a mannequin there, and continued to hear BOM screaming "Grandpa," after which he was suddenly locked inside the shed. Hours later, the door was finally opened, allowing Han to escape the warehouse and return to the car. There, he found instructions demanding that he wear a military uniform and go to the specified spot, or BOM dies. In the present, the old man reveals all of this to the cops, and they give him a cigarette to smoke. When they ask for his second phone, he admits that he threw it into the river under the kidnapper's orders. The officers then notice him putting out his cigarette, but the same way they had found it a few days ago, which strongly implies that he must be the kidnapper. Next, the cops go to the old man's house to look for evidence, and to their shock, they notice a wall identical to the one where Bom's Polaroid picture was taken. Even Han's daughter reveals that her dad initially didn't want to call the police, and suggested they handle the kidnapper on their own. Furthermore, the cops discover that the cigarette found at the payphone matches Han's DNA. His vehicle was seen 1 hour before the Polaroid picture was retrieved, during which Han claims to have been held captive. Despite all the evidence pointing toward him, the old man continues to insist that he didn't kidnap his granddaughter, and asks them to focus on finding her. Meanwhile, Chong tells Kong he doesn't believe Han is the perpetrator. He explains how the criminal wiped the payphone after the call, and it doesn't make sense that such a smart person would leave a cigarette butt at the scene. He theorizes that while the old man was held captive in the warehouse, the kidnapper must have gone to his house to take the Polaroid picture. He even recalls Han attempting to throw the bag from the gate, as if someone was waiting on the other end. However, Kong dismisses all these theories, and accuses Chong of being jealous because Kong got all the credit for the job. On the other hand, Hak-young has finished investigating most of the VIPs, and arrives at one person's home in the countryside. She enters the house, but finds no one there, so she begins snooping around. Hak-young starts looking through a photo album, and compares the wanted poster with a man's picture. She even spots a calendar marking the case's statute of limitations expiration date, which finally confirms her suspicions. While she is busy investigating, the owner of the house suddenly returns outside, which startles her. Elsewhere, Chong visits the warehouse where Han was held, and while looking around, he finds a damaged tape. He takes it to his audio technician friend, who manages to fix the tape. In the audio, they hear Bom screaming, and the kidnapper's faint voice in the background, urging the girl to say "Grandpa." Meanwhile, we see Hak-young, who grabs a knife, and gets ready to stab the person who ruined her life. On the other hand, the police have publicly identified Han as the perpetrator, but Chong attempts to persuade the chief that the kidnapper is still free. He even hands him the tape, but the chief refuses to listen and discards it in the trash. Chong demands to know where the girl is, to which Kong responds that they assume Han must have already killed and buried her. Chong becomes very frustrated, so the chief hands him documents proving that Han's voice matches the voice from the payphone call. Later, a suspicious Chong downloads the audio, and meets with his audio technician friend again. The man carefully analyzes the tape, and compares it to the old recording, only to conclude that the suspect's voice is the same from 15 years ago and now. But the bizarre part is that the recent recording's quality is very poor, and the sound of a plastic button from a recorder is heard. This indicates that someone used the same tape from 15 years ago in this new kidnapping. In a shocking twist, Chong recalls that, aside from the cops, the only person with the old recording is Hak-young, proving that she is the real mastermind. In the next scene, we see a montage of the investigation conducted by Hak-young, which turns out to be a flashback that happened before Bomb's kidnapping. When she arrived at Han's home, she learned he was the kidnapper and tried to stab him, but couldn't bring herself to do it. She then noticed the old man happily greeting his daughter and granddaughter. The poor woman felt it was unfair that he was so happy after ruining her life, so she eventually decided to kidnap Bom for vengeance. In the present, Chong tracks Hak-young's cell phone and arrives in the rural countryside, where he finds her taking care of Bom. He confronts her for her erratic actions, but she reveals that she couldn't bear to see Han laughing with his family after he had snatched her daughter away. Chong wants to return Bom to her family, but she asks him to give her some time, as Han still hasn't repented for what he did. She begs him not to do anything until the trial, to which Chong reluctantly agrees, and leaves with the little girl. Upon returning to the city, Chong arrives at the prison to meet Han, and reveals that he knows he was the kidnapper from 15 years ago. He explains how an eyewitness saw Han stealing the van, and it also turns out that Bomb's mother's heart operation took place around the same time. Through a flashback, we see that Han was indeed the kidnapper, and on the day of the exchange, he was about to return Seo-jin unharmed. But in an unexpected turn of events, she attacked him with a pen and tried to escape into the woods, with Han in pursuit. Not far away, we see Hak-young, who had her head covered with a plastic bag at the kidnapper's command. In the woods, Han was just about to catch the girl, but she tripped and tumbled violently down a slope, leading to her tragic death. Chong soon noticed her body falling down from the woods onto the road, and he ended up crashing his car in an attempt to avoid hitting her. At that moment, Hak-young exited the car to approach her daughter, during which the kidnapper rushed to her car to steal the money. Chong saw this from a distance, but he was trapped under his vehicle to do anything. Sadly, Hak-young's world came crashing down when she realized that her daughter was no longer alive. In the present, Chong accuses Han of causing lifelong pain to the little girl's mother, but despite everything, the old man still doesn't seem remorseful for his actions. He says that because of that money, he was able to give a new life to his daughter, and that is what soothes his conscience. Upon hearing this, an angry Chong reveals that he has Bom, which shocks the old man. Chong takes out a recorder and says that if Han wants his granddaughter to return home safely, they need to make a deal. While leaving the prison, Chong calls Kong to inform him that Han has given a full confession and revealed Bomb's location. The little girl is eventually reunited with her parents, while Han pleads guilty to kidnapping his granddaughter and is sentenced to 15 years in prison. The movie ends as we see Hak-young visiting her daughter's memorial and hugging a tree she planted in her memory. Thus, we reach the end of this movie. Thanks for watching. If you like the movie, support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next movie. Goodbye.